down, power lines are down.
Message of 290 characters follows.
Hey guys, dealing with some spring allergies here. I wanted to bring you a few podcasts that I recorded back in early 2025, late 2024 about Hurricane Helene and some other things surrounding that. So this is some older stuff that I didn't put on my YouTube channel, recorded it for another platform, but I wanted to share here. So that's why you're hearing some things about older events. I hope you guys enjoy. There's a lot of great and useful information here, just in folks' experiences. So hope you guys enjoy.
This is Patrick, in for Forrest again on the Prepping Academy podcast, bringing you part 3 of our after-action report on Hurricane Helene with Forrest, Beth, and Pete as special guests. This week, we're going to pick up where we left off with a discussion on some practical lessons learned during the hurricane. If you'd like to learn more about PrepperNet, learn more about the Prepping Academy podcast, and learn more about prepping in general, please check us out at www.preppernet.com and join in the fun on our social media platform at www.preppernet.net. You can learn about your local city group, events that are going on in your community, and events going on around the U.S. at preppernet.net. Build community, make new friends, and most importantly, practice those skills that make you better at being a prepper. And now we will jump back into our after-action report with some practical lessons learned during Hurricane Helene and during the recovery. So I wanted to get into some practical prepping lessons from this, but I had some questions and some thoughts for you guys. All of us are preppers. We've been preppers for a while. Some of us have been doing this since, not to date ourselves, but 19 was the first 2 digits of the year. Forrest is up here laughing at me.
Every time I say 19 something, my kids automatically start making fun.
Yeah, exactly. If you didn't live through Y2K and all that stuff, and you don't know what a survivalist is, and
right,
we go down all kinds of trails on this stuff. Anyway, prepping lessons. There's a lot of things that we prep for that are happening here, but sometimes our plans, Murphy shows up and they don't survive first contact. So I want to get your thoughts on maybe how things in the prepping world that are presented in the prepping world, at least in this situation, don't work. One of the first things I've got here is a question about power, because we've talked a lot here previously about electronic devices, Starlink, radios, cell phones for navigation, all this stuff that takes power. So where I was at, we had generators everywhere. You could find somewhere to plug a phone in and get power from a generator. There were a lot of generators. There was also a lot of gasoline available. There was diesel fuel available. There was some amount of propane available if the propane tanks didn't go floating down the river. I don't know if you guys saw those things. That was a hazard I did not have on my bingo card, was, 1,000-gallon propane tank floating down the river, spraying propane everywhere, looking for a place to blow up. I gotta say, I didn't have that one on my bingo card. And now it's like, if you live near a river and there's propane tanks around, make sure that stuff's anchored down. There's those sorts of things. What did you guys see in the areas you were in? Did you guys see solar generators? I really didn't see anybody running solar panels and batteries anywhere. Those of us who are preppers, a lot of us have that because we're thinking long-term outage. Mm-hmm. But the rank and file person out there, that doesn't seem to be something that they're using. That's not mainstream. That you guys concur on that?
Yeah. So the amazing thing on that is, after this event happened, for the next 10 days, there wasn't a cloud in the sky. Mm-hmm. So solar would have been perfect, but the only people I knew that had solar were the preppers. You can't take them, you can't go and rob them off the hospital for a situation like this. You know what I mean? Because preppers, we think doom and gloom, we'll go grab some extra ones, but no one had, solar was, but yeah. So everything you need to plan is solar plant panels with low power equipment.
Yeah. And something I noticed, we're going to talk about this more when I do an episode on communications, but a lot of times we think in communications, oh, power's out. All the noise, all the interference, all that stuff goes away. No, there were Chinese inverter generators on every corner making RF noise everywhere to deal with. So not in this situation do you get away from that. What was your guys' experience on fuel availability? I know in previous different disasters, Katrina, that kind of thing, diesel was more available than gasoline. I didn't see that as a situation, this particular one. Did you guys notice anything different?
Well, I agree that we didn't see anybody with solar, and nor were we getting any kind of solar as donations, right? But we weren't asking for it. But at Avery County Airport, we had generous donors who were donating gas, diesel, propane. We were filling everybody's propane tanks. If you bring an empty, we give you a full. We were taking fuel out to people. But when you talk about like 4 months without power, that's a lot of fuel to need. And if from a prepping point of view, I mean, I wouldn't certainly have any near amount of fuel to get me through 4 months. And I definitely would rely on solar. But you're right. In this incident, I'm not seeing a shortage of fuel, even through Spruce Pine. The 2 gas stations were open on the way in. Yeah, fuel I haven't seen or diesel be an issue.
So it seems like sort of short of a true dystopian EMP massive disaster that fuel availability may be better than we think that it might be. And certainly the prevalence of generators will be a lot more than I think maybe we thought at first as well. We did get some solar generators. Mostly we actually deployed those with like Starlinks and that kind of thing. So they didn't have to run generators all the time. But
Well, another interesting thing is, I mean, so there's, how many square miles was affected? What happened was there was like a circle around it, and all the supplies in the areas outside of 100 miles, 200 miles was going in. That's why gasoline wasn't real difficult. Supply trucks were getting in. But what we found out, like Beth mentioned, hey, we need bar chains, and chains, and the oil for the chainsaws. And all of a sudden, all the outside ring was sold out, and then it expanded, it sold out, and it sold out, and it sold out. All the way to Charlotte, you could go to any home improvement store, and they had no chains. Because we were buying it and donating it in, and then so everywhere around this area, we were out of chains, bar oil, 2-cycle oil, all this kind of stuff that they needed. Which, the supply came back, but it was almost society kind of healing itself from outside, pushing things in so they could have everything that they needed. And then we got resupplied. It's kind of a sweet little machine on how it kind of worked.
it was. And, I was in my saw shop about a week after the hurricane hit. And being, roughly 90 miles or so away from the affected area, they were getting hit pretty hard. But something that they told me was that the steel distributors in the U.S. were actually running out of stuff because so many people were buying saws and taking them to Western North Carolina. And it wasn't necessarily the homeowner saws that you were running into in that case. And it may have been that to some extent, but things like MS-462s, 661s, the big saws that there weren't a ton of in the pipeline anyway were disappearing. So that's one of the things. If you're a prepper, think about those kind of things, and you don't have a decent sized saw that's not a homeowner saw, getting one of those beforehand might be a good idea. Because I've heard several people say, I burned up like several chainsaws in the course of some hurricane. And it's like, clearly you weren't using a good saw. I'm just saying. But anyway, the Poland from Home Depot, not really the right tool for the job. But anyway, we can argue saws all day long. I don't want to go down that trail too far, but So those sorts of resources. Another thing that I saw kind of related to that, there were people coming here and getting fuel and hauling it up 5-gallon cans at a time, 5-gallon cans at a time. Something that Grindstone did that was very wise, because they've got a lot of experience in this, is they actually leased like 500-600-gallon fuel tanks and had at their base fuel available for machinery, fuel available for their stuff. So they weren't having to go find gas stations. They had a fuel truck deliver as needed to keep that stuff going. So sometimes thinking on a bigger scale, even as a community, we were looking at pushing propane trucks into parts of North Carolina to set and fill up small tanks for people that were using it for heat, where that there wasn't that available. We talked a little bit about energy and fuel there. What about food and water stores? Did anything you see kind of change your idea on what you would store for food and water? I mean, I know we saw lots of supplies coming in, people who didn't have anything getting supplied, but as a prepper, if you were going to be in the early days of this, if it was going to hit your house, would you do anything different, knowing kind of what happened as far as how you prep and you prepare, assuming, you survived the onslaught?
Well, there was a product I saw that I liked. Families would come and we would try to set them up for like a week at a time. And that's a lot of canned foods for a family. And what kind of canned foods do we have? You can't live on green beans and corn. And that was kind of hard to give people. We had some canned meats. I saw a product that I really liked, and Forrest, I don't know if this is the same company that your friend owns, because it was called Rice and Beans, but it was this fortified with like 14 vitamins and minerals and a really hearty meal of rice, beans, and some other dehydrated vegetables. And we had pallets and pallets and cases of those. So every time a car came along for supplies, we would try to put 3 or 4 of those cases in every car, because I felt like that was a substantial hearty meal with some nutrients to keep your body functioning. And I can't say that's something new I'm thinking about, because I think we think long term, what are we going to eat? That's why some of us have our own freeze dryers, so that we're producing better meals. Cans are definitely bulky, clunky, and hard to get enough of and enough variety of. That's just kind of what I saw from our warehouse point of view. And what I liked to be able to give to those cars was those hearty rice and bean meals.
Well, as far as what would I have, I wouldn't change any of my stuff, at least not at my house. I mean, I do like the canned stuff and all of that. It's cheaper than buying freeze-dried food. If I had a freeze dryer, I probably would make a lot of my own stuff. I also had Slim Jims and stuff like that with me in my get-home bag at prepper camp when it was still raining and stuff, and I couldn't really go outside and make something to eat like I wanted to. I just ate a couple Slim Jims for breakfast. Then I went out and had a cup of coffee or something like that, and I don't think I ate anything substantial until lunch. But when I was out there, I didn't worry about any of that stuff, because I had brought everything I needed to be out there for that time, fuel-wise, radio-wise, and all that. So when I look at our situation, it would have had to have impacted us a lot worse for it make me change any plans I would have. And as far as at my house, if my house is still here, I guess I'm good. If my house is not here, I guess I'm going to have to get in line like everybody else for food or go somewhere else. The types of food, I mean, mine's a little varied, but I don't have pallets and pallets of food laying around. I guess maybe that would be one thing I could work on, is increasing how much food I have.
The interesting thing for me was even though I was around 60,000 people around me, because I was in Tryon, Asheville was right. I mean, I was by myself and alone. And that was something I really have never thought about and planned for, because literally it was a SHTF in a way I couldn't get out from where I was. And I knew no one. And it was by myself. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to just figure this out by myself. There was no, I mean, you just assume you're going to be with family and friends and other people when something happens. And I couldn't contact anyone. I had the lady upstairs. I don't even know her name now, but I didn't go and talk to her. I was just sit in my little place there because I couldn't even go 50 feet past either way on the roads. And, poor me, I guess. I had to come up with things to do. No book to read. No, my electronics, nothing worked. And I just sit there. And so, but I never thought about going through this stuff kind of alone. And not that I was truly alone for the fact, but I didn't know anyone. And I'm like, and I was bored. And I'm like, dang it. What the heck? So that was kind of shocking that I just was sitting there by myself when the poop hit the fan and I couldn't do anything. I didn't have all my tools. I didn't have my chain. I didn't have anything. And that was kind of the weirdest thing for me.
So I can see that. It was crazy when I was up there, obviously, involved in doing stuff. There were so many needs. One of the things I think I would change, and we talked earlier about water and having water stored if all the water around you is contaminated. And that got me thinking about, well, I have so much freeze-dried stuff. I have so many dried things. I have to have water to cook. Really, I need to look at having a few weeks of maybe month or so of shelf-stable stuff that doesn't require water. So early on in something, I'm not really worried about, okay, I'm burning through more than what I need just to drink to cook and do that kind of thing. Another thing, and we kind of talked about this a little bit before we started here, comfort items, alcohol, cigarettes, tobacco, those sorts of things, not just because everybody's stressed and you really don't want somebody going through nicotine withdrawal while they're in the middle of, this stressful situation. So yeah, having some of that stuff is a great way to grease the wheels and get things moving and get things done that may need to be done in a disaster situation, because a lot of that stuff is not going to come in with the donations. It's not coming in with the relief stuff. It's not coming in with that kind of thing. The church is not going to be handing out fifths of Jack Daniels, okay? But if you got some of that around, you might be surprised what you can get your hands on. I'm just saying. Having some of that stuff, we talk about that in the prepping world, but yeah, it's really true. So, thinking more about that, just not for a long-term disaster, even just a short-term situation, is certainly worth considering. The next thing I got on my punch list is a big one for me. This is what I do. It's the communications thing. And how would this change your view on communications? Because this truly was as close to a grid down situation as a lot of folks are ever going to see. And kind of my first little thing on this that I'll say is, yes, ham radio was critical. Ham radio is still critical. The number of lives saved by ham radio during this disaster is hard to put a number on. But what I saw more of than anything else out there was FRS radio service, the family radio service, and GMRS, the general mobile radio service. Even if it was people running Baofengs on those services, because we as preppers like to overestimate the area of land that we're going to be able to operate in. And when you're in a situation like this, 2, 3, 4 miles that your FRS radios cover outside, when you're on foot or you're moving around in an area that the roads are destroyed in, that's a pretty good sized chunk of land to manage. So we saw a lot of communities using FRS. We were getting requests for FRS radios. Hey, can you get radios to our community? We need FRS radios. People were robbing their FRS radios their kids played with to get in communication with the neighbors down the street. So you, as a prepper, you need to get your ham radio license. You need to get into the more advanced stuff. It's a very, very good thing to do, but also realize in a lot of these situations, the lion's share of this work is going to end up being done on FRS. I would also mention that if anybody out there has any information about CB radio, the Citizens Band, being used in this disaster, please reach out to me. I'd love to hear about how it was used because I didn't see any of it. I know it had to be there, but we really didn't see any of it. We saw FRS and GMRS being used by communities, distribution sites, relief workers. We were using it for, like intercommunications on SAW teams and stuff where that they didn't have ham radio operators. We'd put one ham radio operator with them in case they got in trouble, and then they could all communicate via FRS. People used FRS in convoys. What were you guys seeing on that front? And I'm going to pick on, because I don't think he's paying attention, I'm going to pick on Forrest to start this one.
Well, so,
Of course, you forgot how to turn your radio on and what repeater to get on, but
I didn't even think about it. I didn't think that Mount Mitchell repeater would even be working. I just it didn't come to mind. But in Spruce Pine, I know that there was a lot of radios, Baofeng radios that were donated. But to be honest with you, I was logistics from Charlotte, which was 2 hours away. And so I'm probably not the best person to ask on this. I know that Beth was using radios every day. And maybe if she's still awake, we can ask her.
I think she's wanting everybody's attention here. So, Beth, what do you got for me on this front?
Yeah.
No, this is great. So my friend in we were using radios every day, and honestly, it was just FRS, GMRS, like within our site. But my friend in Damascus, her community was destroyed, and just prior to that, these are two PrepperNet people. They had been working with the community, and they just didn't get far enough along before it hit. But afterwards, she got this big old check from where she works and money that she was allowed to use for her community. She's bought everybody radios throughout the area, and they're putting repeaters up probably this weekend, like GMRS repeaters. She's got this people who never thought about radios a day in their life. She's handed them out. She's demonstrated how they work. Down in the holler can reach up to the ridge, and they've got this whole relay of who can reach who. This community of just all ages, but probably mostly elderly, is completely into this, and they completely understand how horrible it felt to not be able to reach each other. So by this coming weekend, they're going to have that area around Damascus really set up comms-wise. And they tend to focus on GMRS rather than ham, just because it's a much easier step into for everyone. And they've also got a few repeaters set up on these ridges. And so I think there'll be a lot of communities probably doing something same as this one.
I know I've had a lot of people reaching out to me, even within PrepperNet and outside of PrepperNet, going, "Hey, we want to learn more about this. We want to get some practice. We want to get the skills. So if this happens again, we're not in this situation." And some of those folks are folks who are using FRS now, but they see, everything that's going on Mount Mitchell on the N2GE repeater. And something along with that, and we'll talk more about this at another point, but is knowing about your repeaters. So many repeaters are off the air. The culture on the repeater is a big deal. That repeater has been a absolute rock star, and there's been some really cool behind the scenes stuff that's gone on there as well to keep that thing on the air. Really, really cool stuff. So, communications is one of those things that during a disaster, there were literally people who were radio operators coordinating airdrops of supplies into their cutoff communities. There were people on Mount Mitchell for days, and I can't remember. I wish I'd taken notes. There were several counties over in the Avery, or communities in the Avery area and the Mitchell County area where they were trying to find a radio operator over there because no one had heard from anybody for days. And they're trying to get a hold of somebody, and there weren't radio operators, or there weren't radio operators who were able to operate with the situation they were in. And we saw a lot of that. And again, that's more for a deep dive, but there's a lot of stuff to chew on there that we can get through at another time. My next thing on my list is bug out vehicles. Some of you guys drove through these areas. What's your thought on the typical, survivalist that wants an MRAP to drive around as a bug out vehicle? What did you see? Forrest is over here going, "Hey, MRAP, I like this.
I like to have one of them. Yeah.
I want one of those too." But we saw a lot of roads that weren't in so great condition, and that I wouldn't want to be in something that heavy on, even if the state of Tennessee did drive an MRAP into the gorge at one point to investigate what was going on up there. But what did you guys observe? Beth, what did you see? What did Pete, Forrest, what did you guys see leaving bug out camp that would make you reconsider maybe what your bug out vehicle plans were? Obviously, range is a thing in fuel. We all have already thought about that, but that's a big thing. And the ability to move trees might also be important, just saying.
Yeah, something 4-wheel drive with a winch on the front to get you out of sticky situations. And what I saw more at the airport, vehicles that were useful, always 4-wheel drive trucks, but sometimes they were too big. So people had their side-by-sides to get through those little narrow, hairy spots.
Yes. And we're going to talk later about putting radios on side-by-sides, because that's a whole unique thing. And we were running side-by-sides all over the place because of that. Pete, what did you see on your way out of bug out camp that might, change your views? Is the pickup truck 4-wheel drive with maybe a camper top or something, is that still the king of the bug out vehicle for the average person?
So I was driving a 4-wheel drive Toyota Tundra, and I was very satisfied with what I got out of it. But I saw other people just driving regular vehicles, getting out of there. And I don't know that anybody in our caravan had any kind of a real problem, because I drove really slow on the way out of Saluda until we got on the highway, which they said I was driving fast. I was not driving fast. There was debris all in the road, and I was afraid that somebody was going to hit something or poke a tire, or I would, and I didn't want to be in that situation. But I was very happy with the 4-wheel drive truck. I know that one of our guys, Tom, that was in the second caravan, he was pulling a camper. He had to climb on top and pull down, I think, an antenna or two that was sticking up because trees were overhanging, and he wasn't going to clear it without ripping something off his vehicle. So in that case, driving through a bad area, maybe a higher profile camper is not great, but it was a heck of a lot better to sleep in during that storm. I can tell you that. So I would say overall that's a wash. Worst case scenario, he would have had to cut down something maybe to get through, but I don't know that he had any other issues than that. I didn't have to drive through any creeks or anything. But Beth, did you notice anybody? I know there's one guy in a van that got stuck across from me, and he buried it so bad he wouldn't stop trying to get it out. He buried it down to the axle. We tried 2 trucks to get him out before we actually wound up seeing a tractor come up, a 4-wheel drive tractor, pull him out. That's what it took to get him out of there. But he kept going out in his van. I don't know what, he couldn't sit still. It eventually caught up with him where he buried his axle on the front of the vehicle. So it was to the point where if somebody would have tried to pull him out from the front, it probably would have ripped his front bumper off. That's how badly he had buried it. And the backside was very difficult to pull on because it was more vertical on the backside of his tire. So you almost had to yank him up out of the dirt that way. Anyway, I highly recommend a 4-wheel drive truck for that type of vehicle. If I could afford an AmRRON, maybe, yeah, but I can't. So it's going to be the Tundra for me. I was really satisfied with everything it gave me out there. I didn't get stuck. Drove literally while the storm was still going down to another campsite to jumpstart a vehicle. And somebody took a picture of me driving back up. I didn't even recognize. I said, "Who's that?" And they were like, "That's you." I didn't even recognize my own truck because it was so much sideways rain. It just looked like almost like a grayscale black and white kind of picture. The only thing that had color on it were the yellow driving lights there, and I think most folks, because they wouldn't let you on roads that were washed out or anything like that, didn't have too much of a problem because they stayed off the damaged roads as much as possible. I mean, we did have roads that were down to one lane, and there was a couple minor slides off of people's yards and stuff out into the street, and there was power lines in the road, but none of them were live, so it wasn't overly dangerous on our drive back, and we avoided Western North Carolina, the rest of it, like the plague. I think all our decisions leaving, doing the caravans, the route we took, passing information back and forth over the radios, making sure everybody was okay, not getting lost, it all worked out really well. And one other thing I would say, if you have a vehicle that has a navigation system on it, it doesn't rely on cell towers. It's using GPS satellites. So unless there's a Kessler syndrome effect in orbit, you're probably going to be good.
Wait.
What?
Are you kidding me?
What do you mean?
Okay. I have a Toyota, and I never use my navigation system built into my Forerunner.
It uses a satellite for us. It doesn't use cell
I
towers.
didn't even think about that. Are you kidding me? Hey, I don't use the navigation in my vehicle ever. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, it's a great thing because it doesn't rely on cell towers.
Son of a gun? What the heck?
You didn't need those big maps after all.
No. Dang it, you just said that. I'm like, wait, what? So here's one thing I think also, I'm a Forerunner Toyota, but I'm just thinking through this. I didn't have any experience in this, but I think I'm right. I guarantee you everyone that was driving in that caravan had their walkie-talkie, their ham radio in their hand. And I bet none of us have except you, Patrick, have our vehicle set up where the antenna is outside the vehicle so that would improve our transmitting and our receiving. Instead, we're in this metal box trying to communicate to people, which would limit the distance that we're trying to transmit and receive. So we should take our vehicles, our four-wheel drive vehicles, or whatever vehicles you're going to be in, and have an antenna, or at least a magnetic mount antenna that you can throw up top that would extend your range instead of staying inside. Because we don't think about having to drive and talk on your radio.
So I had a mag mount on my truck, and I used the mobile radio, but everybody else was using HTs. I was the only one that had a mobile radio. But as close as we were driving to each other, it really wasn't an issue.
It does make a big difference having an outside antenna, though. That's the difference between not at all and being able sometimes to communicate over 100 miles to a repeater. So I can get into Mount Mitchell from my house with the mobile in my truck, and I'm 120 miles away as the crow flies. So
that's impressive.
But
by the way, I did have a chance to meet the owner of the Mount Mitchell repeater. He showed up. He showed up in our mess hall one night.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
He's a PrepperNet member.
I gave him a big old hug.
Yep, he's a PrepperNetter.
Yep.
So
he is.
He is. What?
He's part of PrepperNet Asheville, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Yeah.
No,
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, I've told you that many times, Beth. I know him. I have his
on
number.
the .NET site.
He says that we are. Yes. He loves PrepperNet.
My gosh, I didn't remember that.
Yes, and so there's the Prince of Jordan.
He is the King of Jordan, and
sorry, the King of Jordan.
He was a prince at one time, I guess.
But I think that outside antenna is important, which means I don't have one because I don't have one mounted in my car.
You'd have to have it too. You'd have to have it too. Well, okay, I don't want to be that sad ham, but if you would have to have it tuned for FRS. if you're using FRS radio. If you use a ham radio antenna, it'll work, but it's going to be you're going to have a mismatch as far as the tuning of the antenna and the radio goes.
Yeah, we saw some radios get burned up from that. Two antennas on your car, one for 2 meter 70 centimeter, and another commercial band, one for your GMRS. But that's that's how a lot of us end up with like 6 antennas on our car. By the way, you guys ever see the car's driving down the road that's a ham and he's got like a dozen antennas on his car? It's because you really have to have an antenna for everything that you want to operate on, because none of it works like on more than one service per antenna. So
anyway, I should stop making fun of them people.
Yeah, don't make fun of the porcupines.
Okay.
They're the scary ones. They're the one that can call for support from anywhere. All right. So bug out vehicles, the ability to haul stuff. We've talked a lot about that, because during a disaster, it's about logistics, the ability to move stuff, haul food, haul supplies, haul fuel, haul whatever. Having a vehicle that's, not a Prius or a, Mercedes smart car, generally beneficial. All right. So bug out bags. So I don't know if you guys had to dig into your bug out bags while you were there. If you saw things that, you might want to add to your bug out bag that it made you realize. What are your thoughts on that? I kind of found that my bug out bag was actually pretty well squared away, other than it might be nice to have some more food in it. But what's y'all's take on that?
I didn't need to get into my bug out bag. And again, I carry a lot of stuff in my trunk.
She has the bug out wagon.
She's got a lot of junk in her trunk.
And I have
He's got a big trunk.
So I have a get home bag. I just didn't need to access it in this particular incident.
So I did go into mine, because I had some of my radio gear was actually mine. I carry a cheap little Baofeng. Actually, I think it's a BTEC UV5X3 little tri-bander. I've got various cables. I've got charging cables, and I've even got a charging what is it? The little stand that you stick it in. Cradle, yeah, the cradle to charge it. And I've got it set up where I can just plug it into a USB and charge the radio. The interesting thing was the little USB charger I bought for the extra large battery for the Baofeng also works on the Yaesu FT5DR. So I was able to recharge my Yaesu with the Baofeng charger. I loaned my cradle to somebody else that needed their radio went dead and they didn't have extra battery. There was a lot of that. A lot of people recharging their radios because they had them on all day long, listening to traffic around the campground. And of course, you could hear everybody with Prepper Camp on a different channel if you wanted to. I think, what were we on? Channel 3 or 4 or something like that we hung out on
Yeah, and I think the staff at Prepper Camp was on an FRS channel as well.
I think they were on like 7 or something like that. I can't remember. Heck, I mean, people kept giving me updates that I never even knew about, like which classes were canceled and which that it got delayed a day. And that all that stuff right there, nobody came into Tent City to say anything. I know that. I guess if you're in FEMA camp, you just find out stuff from Scuttlebutt. Yeah, and I feel like I almost dropped the ball as far as tuning down to 11 meters to see if there was any activity. But honestly, after the hurricane passed, I switched over to 40 meters and got on digital mode. I wasn't even thinking about CB radio. It might have been cool to have had a scanner, though, see what was on the air. But I really wasn't thinking I was going to be wanting a scanner ever. Yeah, my bug out bag, I didn't bring my bug out bag. I brought my get home bag that I use every day at work. I don't know that I really needed that Bluetooth speaker, but it was there. And all kinds of charging cables and stuff like that I did use. So, and I did have some snacks and stuff in there. If I'd have had to walk home or something, that thing would have definitely been on my bag.
The only thing I went into my bag was for I have these. They're like fireman washcloths. They're like a towel and you open it, it's like 2 feet by 2 feet. And so like when a fireman comes out of a fire, he can wipe himself off and get clean. And I have,
Are those the things that Dave Wolf was giving out? That
yeah. Mhm.
yeah, I
So
remember.
I had a case and I pulled one of them out and I gave myself a little bath. And other than that, other than that, I didn't really need anything. And you know what else? I'm such a loser here because I'm thinking in my bag, I have a home patrol scanner that I could have pulled out
Forrest.
and I could have heard everything that was going on
Oh, gosh.
around me because that scanner I mean, the home patrol is like the
I'm
best.
not sure I would have admitted to that.
And
I think I would have admitted
and
that.
I'm like, okay, I'll write a book on preparedness. I just don't know how to actually practically do it. Okay.
Forrest has been very honest tonight.
I am really
Yeah.
impressed.
But yeah, I have a home patrol in there, and I'm like, darn it, I could have pulled that sucker out and listened to anything going on. But what I did was I pulled out my Bail Thing radio, not even my Anytone, my Bail Thing, and I tried to pick up stations like FM stations, listen to the radio, like music.
You default to the level of your training.
Man,
Hey.
my training is.
That was part of your mental stability, was finding you a country station to listen to, right, Forrest?
Oh my! Well, I can't listen to country, but
So on my so you can program in like your in your navigation system on your Pathfinder, just the entrance to your neighborhood. So people don't know where you live if your truck gets stolen. They hit home, they just wind up at the marquee in the front of your neighborhood or something. And but it's always a great way to kind of get you going in the right direction. So when you're leaving an area,
so I didn't have my phone maps downloaded. I forgot didn't know I could use my car maps because it's satellite. I had a home patrol radio there. I was next to the largest, best repeater in the United States and didn't even think about doing it. What I did do is I went to the worst possible technology during that time is Meshtastic. Let's see if I can connect anyone with Meshtastic. And I'm like, well, I couldn't. And that was the only technology I literally tried to connect because I had my little repeater kind of thing. And, I need a redo.
in fairness, Forrest, the Mount Mitchell repeater only reaches into 5 states.
Yeah, no biggie.
Oh gosh.
I am just so embarrassed right now for Forrest.
You know what? No, this is good. This is good because it's like me. I brought that little battery. I drained that thing out in one day. I thought it would last longer than that. It did not. A little 20 amp hour battery. I didn't bother to recharge it, but if I'd have had a larger battery with me, I definitely would have left everything just running off that battery for the 2 or 3 days. So I did buy another lithium iron phosphate battery after this thing happened. I probably will take that one on campouts. 100 amp hours should do it. And I probably would also next time bring a watt meter so I can track the power that's coming out of the battery, see what kind of capacity I get out of it.
Here's my new toy.
Oh, you got you one.
Oh, you got yourself a cool.
Yeah.
It won't focus.
That's a 100 amp hour lithium battery. And there's some killer deals on Amazon on those at the moment. I shared one the other day for $150. It's like, if you're, and pro tip, we'll talk about this later. If you're getting into radio after this, buy a 100 amp hour lithium battery and a float charger for it and skip the power supply. Because we're, after all, planning on, using communications when the grid is down. And for what you'll spend on a decent power supply now, you can get set up for off-grid and you can add a solar charge controller and some solar panels later. But, it's something to think about for sure. One of the things also that I think is worth talking about here is the red lines, the triggers for bugging out. I think a lot of people in North Carolina, and this was a hard one to predict, so I'm not Monday morning quarterbacking anybody. Don't take it that way. I think a lot of folks waited longer than they should have to leave if they were going to leave, because I think normalcy bias was a huge factor there. Of we've never seen the river get this high. It's not going to get that high. We're good. And then the next thing they know, their neighbor's house is floating away. So is that something that you guys have kind of looked at? Maybe I need to leave sooner than I think I probably should, kind of thing. Have you guys revised your thoughts on that as far as like bug out type things? Because there's always something people say. I'm in my permanent location. There is no bugging out from here. I assure you, there is something that will make you bug out.
So at my campsite, which was all set up, I'm sure some of it would have still been there when I came back if I'd have left. But here's the thing. First off, we were all kind of hanging out that night and underneath the canopy, and I had sidewalls on my canopy, so we weren't getting sideways rain and underneath the canopy. I couldn't legally drive. So, so there was no bugging out.
Did someone bring Fireball again?
No, I had double oak bourbon. I don't know what other.
No, there was Fireball.
There was there. I didn't drink any Fireball. Other people call that cinnamon, Becky.
So, Forrest, you still same thoughts on bugging out? Different thoughts on bugging out?
No, I got out of Dodge as soon as I could. There was no, so we have so I had to drive 30 minutes towards Charlotte to even connect with my wife. And, I just about died. I was in the middle of a hurricane, and she goes, our home house generator didn't come on. And I'm like, what? And so she was out of power, which, that was another disaster that happened. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll come home. So what happened is the neighbor tried to get it started, turned the switch off, never turned it back on, and he couldn't start it. I came on, turned it on, hit the button, and it started right up. So not sure why it didn't come on. And but then it turned back on and our generator was running. But I did get out. I didn't stay. As soon as the roads was clear, I left. I was like, But here's the thing. Here's the interesting thing is we were in the middle of the storm, and the world knew the problem that we were in. And we were the last people to know what just happened.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah,
I'd agree with that.
I mean, the world was seeing it on TVs and their video and people reporting, and we're there because we didn't have TVs. The radio stations were down, and we were it might have been our fault for not seeking the information to find out how bad it was, but everyone knew it was bad except us. I thought a couple trees just fell down, and as soon as we clear them up, I'm gone, kind of thing. So being in the eye of the storm, we were the last to know how bad it was.
Well,
I'm not saying everyone was like that, because if your house is floating down the river, you're in a bad situation. How bad it is.
Yeah.
But I don't think a lot of people had the, what's your trigger point for leaving? So I talked to one family who they saw the water rising. They did get scared. They got out of their house with the dog and the cat, and they ran up the hill to a shed, and they were huddled in the shed with 3 other families also there with their children and cats and dogs. And she showed me the video of what she took from that shed looking back down towards the river to her house. And it was one of those where the house was just ripped away. So I don't think they had a lot of warning. So I'm not sure if you're talking about this type of flash flooding situation or just in general, where we're home now and what is our trigger that's going to make us leave for our bug out locations. I'm probably going to leave on a hair trigger. Like, it's not going to take much to make me want to leave because I can always come home if I made a mistake.
I think, yeah, I think that's the question, this, because there is often such short notice. And I said, a lot of these people, not Monday morning quarterbacking anybody, a lot of people really didn't have any idea how fast this was going to come. And it rose way beyond what they thought, literally in minutes. But we look at that and go, okay, a lot of us have the attitude, well, if I have to bug out, I'll have, a half day's notice to make my decision and get out, or, I'll have some time to plan and think on this. And yeah, that may actually not be the case. It may be grab what you can and go and have your stuff staged. And like you said, maybe, this is not looking right. Maybe I'm going to go ahead and load all the stuff in the truck and be ready to go. Or maybe I already know the potential roadblocks or hazards that could trap me where I'm at, that maybe it's not as bad at my house, but it's worse a few miles away, or would get worse a few miles away. And do I need to beat that through that area? One of those things that you kind of look back on this and go, okay, that's something I need to be aware of. It's not just my location, but if I'm going to leave, because I saw some videos of people who were trying to leave, and both ways they went, after a few miles, the road was flooded and they were stuck. So kind of, to me, did change my kind of bug out theory a little bit into what you said of, maybe if it's looking bad, then maybe I should go ahead and just go. And if I didn't need to, then, it's not the end of the world. Fuel storage. We touched on that earlier. You have enough fuel? You think you should have more fuel? Do you want to be like some folks and try to have a year's worth of fuel to run your generator? I don't know how people do that, but there's varying degrees of things. I think this shows, if you're cut off, you can never have too much fuel. Are you guys comfy with your fuel storage if you needed to bug out? Do you have enough fuel squared away? Do you think that you would be ready if you needed to leave and you knew you were coming out of something like this where it may take quite a bit of fuel to get out, to run equipment, to clear your way out? You feel like you're set there, or do you need to kind of plus up that situation?
100% no, especially what I've seen with the people and it coming on to winter like this. It was already down in the 30s. Even at my bug out location, we don't have enough fuel stored up. And that winter is scary. That scares me. So also for cooking. So fuel is a huge thing that needs to be beefed up in my world.
So for me, my bug out location, we're good on fuel. We have 500 gallon of kerosene tank. We have 2,000. What's the big size propane?
The big ones, yeah. We don't need to share all the juicy details for everybody.
And
listening.
we've got 500 gallons of gasoline as well. Home, I've got 40 gallons of gas, and on my back of my 4Runner, I have one of them. I would probably put my gasoline on top of my vehicle, because I would pull a trailer full of stuff behind my vehicle. But so, yeah, I have 40 gallons. That's enough to get 2 cars anywhere we want to go, 400 miles.
You've thought through this. That's the kind of thing.
This. And in Miami, Florida would, on the beach where my retreat is, we could probably make it. But but we've thought through that. We've got plans in place of where to meet if we can't make it to our house. And if I don't have, let's say I can't get back to my house to get the gas, we have other people within our group that to be sure we can get to someone's house that has 40 gallons or more, as well.
I think I know how you're going to die in next year's T-Rex.
Oh, great. Thanks.
It's going to be a terrible fuel accident.
There was a spark. It was boom.
Is that roof leaking? It's leaking water.
You smell gas.
Oh. You got anything to add to fuel for us, or should I move on to my next fun topic here?
Yeah, so I think on the other side of the coin is how would you do operating without fuel? Not do you have enough fuel? Can you operate without fuel? Do you think you could get by without it? Because it may come down to that for a lot of people. You know, it's one thing to have 20 extra gallons around or something to run a vehicle, run a tractor or a chainsaw or something, but most people aren't going to have 500 or 1,000 or 2,000 gallons of extra fuel. I always think there's an alternative to using fuel because, for one thing, if you're in an area where there's other people around and you're running a generator all the time, you're just making yourself a target. They're going to hear it. So I'm kind of becoming more and more of a fan of solar panels and batteries. Only running a generator on occasion when you absolutely have to.
So, kind of my next thing here is community organization and teamwork. We have seen communities come together in amazing ways, and we've seen groups come in and do phenomenal teamwork. I saw a poll on the internet the other day asking about a disaster and what would you do? What would you improve if you knew something like this was going to happen? And it was questions like food and water, defense, community organization. You know, would you go out and start knocking on doors and getting to know people in your community and building a community group? And that one was either the lowest or the second lowest selected one on the poll, which was really disappointing to me because, one, we're PrepperNet, we're about community. And it's just unnerving that people don't look at the fact that they need to be coordinated and organized in their communities. Do you guys think that this will maybe encourage people to do more of that, to do that now? Or do you think they're going to still take the beans, bullets, and Band-Aids and we'll figure that out afterward?
Here's the problem with this, and I don't want to be a naysayer, okay? But let's let all the search teams in the disaster area report. And I guarantee you, none of them deployed. None of them deployed. There's search teams all over and community teams all over the disaster area. And none of them, even the ones from the Charlotte area that could go and help train people, the Union County one, they didn't deploy. I'm telling, and I was really taken back because communities can't, you're in Avery County, people are trying to figure out their own house, their own situation, and it's the outside people that came in and literally took over every operation that was there. Rescue, they took over communications, they took over feeding people, they took over clearing the roads. The people in the disaster area, the search teams, the community groups, the fire departments, the police departments didn't come together, and they were not operational at all. The only operational fire departments were they weren't going out with their fire trucks at all. They were coordinating, maybe some life-saving rescues where people driving their cars or their four-wheel drives. So, but that's kind of eye-opening because you think, oh, we got the search team, we'll be able to help each other. So there are disasters that community groups are useless. And it is, I know that one of the teams we sent to Spruce Pine to do search and rescue, it was their survival group that went. They literally, they got their group together and said, okay, let's go as a group and let's go up to Spruce Pine and help these people. So they deployed their own survival group and went, but no search team from the Raleigh area went and deployed. No ham radio club like Aries or none of them deployed. So all the emergency groups that we have, the only ones that deploy are people like Cajun Navy, people like PrepperNet, people like AmRRON, people like Grindstone Ministries, people like Samaritan's Purse. There wasn't even Red Cross in Mitchell County. So that's kind of it. I mean, something that we need to think about is that the groups that went up there were churches and groups that weren't even organized, like the whole system we have. I don't know. You get what I'm saying though. That was really surprising to me.
It wasn't surprising to me because prepper groups like you just listed, people who are people that want to help people, that don't have the bureaucracy, that don't have the red tape, that don't have the other stuff. On the Mount Mitchell repeater, the saying was hams helping hams. You know, they weren't an Aries group. They weren't some organized group. They're just people out there doing what they needed to be done. And I think that's not surprising because we keep seeing this over and over and over in disasters. You and your network, your group, whatever you want to call it, is who's going to come to your rescue. It's not the Red Cross. It's not Salvation Army. It's not FEMA. It's not any of those groups. It's people like PrepperNet. It's people like Grindstone. It's all these people who want to come and help and have the skills to help, because a lot of these other groups, they don't have the skills to help on this kind of thing. Heaven forbid that it's some sort of civil defense situation. They're going to be even more lost. Beth, you have thoughts on, seeing communities come together?
I mean, I will say originally I was in Madison County, which granted was not as hard hit, but I saw beautiful community coming together. But they also weren't in the worst of it, right? But I saw amazing things happen at their community center and the volunteer fire department and neighbor helping neighbor. And they came together in just a really neat way. I can also say up in the hollers or different areas, it was neighbor helping neighbor. I don't know if you want to call that community or not. I think it is very micro.
Organized groups kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. So non-organized, micro communities helping each other. You saw that time and again. And so to me, that did tell me maybe not to, depending on what the scenario is to not think so inward of my little group, but to think a little more community than that, of helping each other and being there for each other. I'm not, I'm talking at a different level than Forrest, more micro. And to me, the importance of community moved up on my list when I look at it that way. So it's higher on my list than it used to be in an order of importance.
I think those community networking, knowing your neighbor, the neighborhood level, the microcosm, that first, couple of miles around you, that's who's going to be there when it happens.
Mm-hmm. So I think so. On that poll you were talking about, how that was near the bottom, community organization and things like that. That does not surprise me, because given the political climate and how quickly people turned on each other during COVID, family, neighbors, coworkers, and stuff like that, yelling at each other for not having a mask or getting a vaccine. I think there's been a lot of distrust sown between different groups of people, and you've got people that have been wedged against each other through class warfare. You got racial stuff, you got religious stuff, And then you had all this COVID stuff, and I think it really damaged trust between people and their neighbors. They look at them like, I think that guy called the police on me, or I think that guy, reported me to the HOA. I think this guy called my employer. So I think you see a lot of distrust, and I think that's why that thing came out in the poll so low. But if you look at these people when things got bad, they pulled together as much as they could anyway, if they were able to. And so I don't think the poll bears out what actually probably happened up there.
Absolutely. All right, last question for the night. The never-ending debate in the prepping world of rural versus suburban versus urban. In this situation, the urban areas are getting all the attention and all the build back for a disaster. The rural communities are having to do it all themselves. Not saying that's a bad thing. That's a risk that you accept when you choose to be on your own and take on rugged individualism. And a lot of us don't like people in our business, so that's a good thing. But does anything about this change your thoughts on the whole debate of rural, suburban, urban prepping and that kind of thing?
I mean, somewhat for me, but I think it's very scenario dependent. So because of this scenario, I did notice and realize that the urban areas were getting the attention and the resources, and hey, better for them. They're getting their power on first. But if it was a worse SHTF scenario, let's say like Venezuela style collapse, and it was more dangerous in the cities, right? And a little more safe in the rural areas. So it's scenario dependent. But I do see the value in this scenario of being in the urban areas.
Also, a lot of supplies and government and people go to the more suburban, the more city areas because the most coverage, also the biggest bang for their buck. I mean, there's only in the county of Mitchell County, there's only 14,000 people. Where you could go and deploy into Buncombe County, Asheville, and literally you're surrounded by, 50,000 people. So there is something about the bigger bang for your buck when you can help more people. And if the television and stories come out of it and there are more hands to help as well, than going to, it's difficult in Spruce Pine at probably the Avery County Airport, because people were crying and people were getting, literally, they had nothing. Some people, helpers, can't deal with that. Let's just be, I mean, it's going to be emotional for the people like, Beth and others that left, and it's going to stay with them a long time. Different than going to Asheville, just handing out food as people are driving up in their, in their Mercedes and BMWs. When Beth said many cars pulled up and the cars had mud all over the car and inside the car because floodwaters hitting it and pounding it and broke windows or whatever. That's a whole different scene than, than when you can go to the city with your kids and help people. So I'm more of a rural area person. As preppers, we are supposed to be self-reliant, and that's where every time I consult with any survival group, I tell them, you got to get to know your neighbors. You don't want to be considered the city guys or the city people, and you want to be part of the family. So when the poop hits the fan, they have your back and you have their back.
Yeah, I think that's the reality of the prepping type thing, is which one in different scenarios are so different. Disasters, the infrastructure in the cities tends to be better and more resilient, but in other situations, it might be very different. I had defense listed here as something to talk about, and I don't know that this really changed many of our opinions on defense. It was a natural disaster, and quite frankly, on that front, it was a very tame one compared to some we've seen in New Orleans. Not to point the finger at anybody, but point the finger. Yeah. It really didn't change my thoughts on that. It's just, it's about the same. It is what it is. I know there was a story of a lady who was like camped out with nods on and a shotgun doing, defense for her community somewhere in North Carolina. I heard a story about, but I don't know anything about that. I don't know if there was a need for that or if that was just
That was probably bad.
Yeah, might have been. So I don't know that this changes my thoughts on defense. It is what it is, and crime in this situation doesn't seem to be that much different than it was before. There is that feeling of being, a little more on your own because there is no 911 to call. There's, nobody's coming to rescue you. So if something did happen, you got to be a little more independent. But
it is interesting because all the preppers, all the people that went up there to help, the first people that went up there, they all knew to take their arms. Beth's saying that everyone at the airport had guns. I mean, not that they needed it, but we've seen Katrina. We've seen all these, and Sandy, where things did kind of go sideways a lot. So, but that just tells you that these mountain folks are way better in a sense. Because none of that happened up there.
Hey, you know what didn't happen up in the mountains? Gun confiscations. Mm-hmm. You didn't see any of that happening.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I think that's the thing with that. It's everybody was armed, so there was that deterrence too. I mean, it's one of those things where nobody wants to FAFO in the mountains. That was kind of my last thing. And does anybody have any closing thoughts, prepping lessons, things they want to bring before we wrap this up as to what's probably going to be a 3-episode series?
All right. The only thing I would close with is to say this is obviously the long haul for these people, and there's plenty of places to go volunteer. And you will be helping other people, and yourself will be richly rewarded in the relationships that you build and the things that you learn. So I would encourage everyone to find a place to go volunteer if you can, a day, 2 days a week, whatever you can do. It's the right thing to do, and you'll be blessed by it.
I agree with that. And I also would say, hey, you be the leader and pick up the responsibility in your neighborhood to get people on ham radio and to get some training for your neighborhood, because next month it could be your neighborhood, and the more you're prepared, the better you'll get through it. So you're listening to this for a reason. Step up and be that person in your community.
So I would agree with Forrest. When I joined PrepperNet, I didn't have a ham radio license. I was challenged to get my license and up my prepping game, and it really was a next logical step for me as far as being prepared, because other than having some experience on CB radio, I really didn't have any comms gear or anything like that, or just CB radio experience is all I ever had. Radio is radio, but ham radio kind of is a whole animal in itself, and the capabilities that you can set yourself up with, pretty impressive. And if you were there to hear the stuff that was going on the repeater, the people asking for help, the people doing welfare checks, myself included, tell my family I'm okay, because I couldn't call them. It's a game changer, folks. You really need to, if you think you can do this, if you think this is something that could help you, you really should look into getting your license and learning how this stuff works. We've got a good comms team on PrepperNet that will help you as much as you're willing to be helped. And if you're committed to getting your ham radio license, there's nothing going to stop you from doing it.
I want to thank you guys for giving up your evening to get together and rehash, and discuss all of this stuff yet again for a lot of us, to put together what should be a very fun episode series, the Prepping Academy podcast. I hope that all of our listeners will find this stuff to be valuable and learn some stuff and be able to improve their situation in preparing, because this could be your location next. Statistically, of all the things that we prep for, a natural disaster is probably the most likely one for all of us to see. So that being said, thank you guys for listening. Forrest, Beth, Pete, thank you guys for turning out. Y'all have a great night, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
73.
Night.
Later.
Bye.
Night.
If you would like to learn more, please check us out at www.preppernet.com and our social media site at www.preppernet.net. I want to give another thanks to Beth, Forrest, and Pete for turning out to have this wonderful discussion with us. We will pick up with a few more episodes on Hurricane Helene in the future as we discuss some communications lessons learned, things that worked, things that did not, and how you can improve your communications position. If an event like this happens in your area, you can be a help to yourself, your family, and your community, and not be depending on others. Because without communications, you really have no idea how large the disaster is and what impacts it may have on you, as there were things going on upstream where conventional communications were offline that would eventually affect people downstream. And that bit of forward warning could make a great difference on the situation for you and your loved ones. With that, prep on, stay frosty, and we will see you in the next episode of the Prepping Academy podcast.